Good morning. Welcome back to class. We are going to today cover the second half of 3.3. We're going to be talking about federal and state unemployment taxes. But before we get started, we're going to answer any questions that anybody might have about Social Security and Medicare homework questions. Quincy.
I wasn't here and I just want to see one word.
Okay, and I'll be glad to share my notes with you. If you've got a minute after class, I'll do that with you. Okay?
I got a question on 25 and 27.
Okay, 25.
23, 25, 27.
All right, someone before class asked about 23. So let's start with problem 23. That's in the payroll handout for 2001, and it's going to be on page 9. Page 9 says, Kelly is self-employed. She earned $795 last week. She had previous earnings of $19,443. Find the amount of her self-employment tax. When we talk about FICA, it's broken into two pieces, Social Security and Medicare. Generally, what happens when you work for someone is out of your paycheck comes 6.2% of the first $80,400 of your earnings, and out of your paycheck comes 1.45% of all of your earnings. When you're employed by someone else, your employer matches those amounts. And so double that really gets sent to the government for you. You pay half, your employer matches that and sends it to the government. In the case of Kelly here, she is self-employed. So she is both the employer and the employee. So we need to have her pay both halves of that. If you look at your notes on the top of the second page, I'm going to put these on the screen first. It says, if someone is self-employed, the combined FICA, the combined rates for Social Security and Medicare are 15.3% of the first $80,400, and that rate is true for 2001. That rate continues to go up, and it changes every year. It has for the last several years. It was about $76,000 last year. So, since Kelly is self-employed and her total gross earnings so far are less than that $80,400, she's responsible for both halves, which is where that 15.3% comes in. So on number 23, depends on if you're going to do it as a proportion or you're going to do it as an equation. I kind of like the proportion. You'd set it up this way. 15.3 over 100 is the same as the part that she pays is to, and what was her total earnings? $795. If you set that up, cross multiply, you'll get 100p equal 15.3 times 795. You're going to divide by 100. Divide by 100. And somebody that's got a calculator. I don't even have mine out today. P equal 121.64. That would be her FICA withholdings during this pay period out of $795. That's a lot of money. 15.3%.
What did you just find there?
We found the FICA withholdings.
Yeah, I thought you did like the 80,400 minus her prior earnings.
And was that over the limit? Her prior earnings were $19,000. I actually skipped that step because I could see that she wasn't even close to.
Oh, so you just don't.
None of her earnings. Her prior earnings were $19,443. Her current earnings are $795 by estimation.
So the only time you do that is if it's over.
I actually did it quickly in my head. Yes, I did that quickly in my head. I could see it was no place close to being to the limit. So all of her wages had to pay the FICA rate. It wasn't over the limit. That actually is the total FICA. That's Social Security and Medicare combined. That 15.3, and it's actually given to you on the chart that way. If you, do you see it at the top of page 2? On the class notes. Second page. Do you see there on the top? It shows that if she's self-employed, it's 15.3. Okay, that is a combination of Social Security and Medicare. If I wanted to come up with that 15.3 another way, it's actually made up of the 6.2% and the 1.45%, which is a total of 7.65, and then you double it times 2. So you're paying both halves of that. That would equal the.
So if they just want you to find it, do they ever just want you to find it like individually?
I'm not going to ask you to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you to do that.
So then when they tell us to do that on self-employed, then you're going to actually be finding both of them. You're gonna be finding
At the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't even. And the only time you use the cumulative is if it's over.
Yes, if it's over the 80,400, then there'd just be the Medicare, and then you'd use the other number there. You'd use 2.9. Did that answer that question? Yeah. Okay.
When you do the test, will you give us charts on
Yes.
the deductions and the amounts
Absolutely.
of the deductions?
No one is expected to memorize those. They change every year. The top of the test will say, use these rates. It will give you the ceiling and the rates for Social Security. It will give you the rate for Medicare. We're also going to today talk about unemployment tax rates, federal and state. We'll give you all of those. Those can change. We don't expect you to memorize them. We expect you to be able to work with the numbers, but not memorize them. And likewise, we're going to be doing income taxes in our next class session. We're going to do both state and federal taxes for the year 2001. You will have those attached to the test, and they'll be attached to the final. And all this information will be put on the final and on the tests. Strictly a matter of calculating. We're assuming you're the accountant. You've got these numbers available to you, and when you've got the correct charts or whatever, and they'll just be at the very top of the test as a reference. Using the numbers is our goal, not memorizing the numbers. They change. Actually, 2 years ago, I taught summer school, and the rates changed the 1st of July. We were in the middle of a session. So Kansas tax rates changed in the middle of the summer last couple years ago. So we don't expect you to rememorize all these charts. Okay, does that answer your question about 23? Yeah. Are we moving on to 25?
Well, if you said if they're married that it doesn't matter, right? It's the same thing.
Great question. 25 says Frederick is married. It says he earned $655 last week and had previous cumulative earnings of $79,859. Find the amounts of his FICA taxes. Being married or being single does not affect the FICA rates. Medicare nor Social Security have any charts that deal with married or single. That only deals with both the state and federal income taxes, which again, we're going to talk about next class session. So that's just there to get you used to kind of keying into the married and single numbers, but to let you know that that doesn't affect our calculations for FICA. So do we want to do that one? Sandra, do we want to do that one?
Oh, I figured it out.
You figured it out, okay, because she had a question about that particular problem earlier. On number 25, are we over the limit?
Yeah, when you add it
And
together.
9,000.
Okay, well maybe we should do that one. Do we want to take a minute to do it? Again, we ignore the fact that he's married. We're going to come along and say his prior earnings are $79,859. This particular pay period, which is a weekly pay period, he earned $655. What's his new cum? That's the first thing we need to know. Gotta get me.
80,514.
$80,514 would be his new cum. He has just passed the limit. So I need to do that special thing where I look at how many dollars in this current paycheck are under the limit and how many dollars in this current paycheck then that are under the limit are the ones that we have to take out the taxes for. Okay? So I begin with 80,400, which is the limit this year. We call that limit the ceiling. It's a maximum. I'm going to subtract 80,000. Nope, other way around, right? No, I'm going to subtract 79,859 from last month's or last week's total. This will give us the number of dollars that are under the limit. What number do we get? I can't hear you. $541 are under the limit. So I need to pay the Social Security rate on that 541, not the total of 555. Everything above that is over the limit. I don't need to take out taxes. So we're going to go $541 times, and I'm going to use that dot to mean multiply. Yes, 0.062, and that'll give me my Social Security. Is that all right? And then we're going to take 655 times 1.045. Was it 1.045? It's 1.45, I'm sorry. 1.45. Kind of sloppy today. No, it's 0.0145. Let me erase that one and start over. I'm talking and thinking at the same time. 0.0145 equal. And this will give me my Medicare. Medicare has no limit. Social Security has a ceiling. Okay? When I get $541 times 0.062, what do I get? Say it slow. 54. And I'm taking the entire amount times the Medicare limit, and what do I get? 950. Social Security, Medicare. Does that make sense? You've got to be able to handle the months or the weeks or the pay periods when we go over the limit. Okay. Oh, so then you had a question on 27?
I don't even know if we were supposed to do 27.
Okay. Said we didn't have to do 27.
No.
And if we did, we'd know how to do it. He's over the limit there. He's reached a new cum of 82,221. We would subtract this month's wages to find our prior cum to work with. Is that all right? Okay, questions about anything else to do with the problems on 3.3 dealing with FICA? Super. Sorry I was sloppy there. The next thing we're going to do is more discussions on 3.3. I've divided it into two pieces because it's hard to get all of those pieces together in one 50-minute period. But FUTA and SUTA, federal unemployment taxes and state unemployment taxes, work exactly like FICA. They are flat taxes, and like Social Security, they have a ceiling. So let me get my class notes out. And we're going to talk about those for just a minute. I don't know if we can read those or not. It says, in the following examples, the federal unemployment tax rate is 0.8% of the first $7,000 of an employee's gross earnings. It is not the employee's responsibility to pay this federal unemployment tax. It is the responsibility of the employer to do that. Comes out of the employer's profits. It does not come out of the employee's paycheck. If you looked at your paycheck, you would have a deduction for Social Security. You would have a deduction for Medicare or possibly those two combined in one total called FICA, but you would never see out of your own personal paycheck a deduction that was taken for federal unemployment or state unemployment taxes. The reason is the employer pays those on your behalf directly to the government, okay? They are the employer's responsibility. In every case to the federal government, 0.8% of the first $7,000 of an employee's wages are paid to the government for federal taxes, unemployment taxes. That's another one of those numbers you will not need to memorize. They'll be in a rate chart at the top of the test. They'll be on the final when you're asked to calculate them. For the state unemployment taxes, they're based on the first $8,000 of each. So we've got another ceiling. Are you with me? We've got a $7,000 ceiling for the federal government. We have an $8,000 ceiling, and all wages that you pay an employee after $7,000, no federal unemployment taxes. All wages over $8,000, no state unemployment taxes. There is not one rate assigned to all employers. Take a minute and think about your car insurance. It's called an experienced rating. If you have a lot of wrecks, what happens? And a lot of claims, what happens to your car insurance? It goes up. It's based on the experience a company has with you. And if you're a safe driver, after so many years, you'll get a good driving benefit, and they will go down. It says not really. But are you understanding what an experienced rating does? Rates vary depending on the experience that someone has had with the driver of a car. State unemployment taxes work the same way, and it's an experienced rated system. The percentage that someone pays for state unemployment taxes is based on the experience that the state has had with that company. If lots of people have applied for and received unemployment, the experience rating causes their rate to go up. Likewise, if there have not been claims and unemployment taxes have not been paid, then it can go down. So it's a rate that's based on experience. So in every case, we're going to tell you the experience rating that you're going to pay for state unemployment taxes also, and it'll vary by employer. Okay? Okay. We're going to be dealing with two things at the same time. We're going to be dealing with both state and federal unemployment taxes. Emily has gross earnings, $850 for the week ending March 17, year 2000. It says her cumulative prior earnings were $6,000. So far, her employer has paid her $6,000 this year. Her employer has a 3.7% Kansas unemployment experience tax rating. So the rate that that employer is paying the state is 3.7%. Find the amount of her employer's federal and state unemployment taxes. So we're going to be checking for the limit at the state level and the federal level and doing both of these simultaneously. $7,000 limit for the federal, $8,000 limit for the state. First, we're going to check Emily's cumulative new earnings. Prior to today, prior to this paycheck, she had $6,000 worth of earnings. $850 this week, new earnings $6,850. Is she over either limit? No. Her employer needs to pay 0.8% for the federal, and he also needs to pay 3.7% to the state for the state unemployment. So we're going to do both of those calculations next. We're checking to see if we're over the limits, and we're not. We come down and we're at $850 for the federal. $850 is the current paycheck. The decimal that is used to represent 0.8% is 0.008. We were at 0.8%. We moved the decimal 2 places to the left. Yes? It's a very small number. All right? 850 times 0.008. You've got to remember to change that to the proper decimal. It's going to say $6.80 set for federal unemployment taxes to the government on Emily's pay this week. Does that come out of Emily's paycheck? No. Okay. Computation next for state unemployment taxes. Again, everything is under the state limit. All $850 are taxed. I take 3.7%, convert it to a decimal. It's .037. Do the calculations. To the state government, $31.45 sent for state unemployment. Don't want to be boring, but does this come out of Emily's paycheck? No. And it's because as test time rolls around, we're going to ask you to identify which pieces of these taxes are the employer's responsibility, which are the employee's responsibility. FUTA and SUTA, 100% employer. Income taxes, 100% employee. Social Security, if you are actually employed, not self-employed, but employed with an employer, each person pays half. There's a matching. Does that make sense? So I keep wanting to talk about the responsible party for all of these taxes. Okay, so here we go. Next week, Emily gets another paycheck. Whoa, wrong direction. She keeps going to work. These happens to be Fridays in 2001, I believe. Her earnings on her next paycheck are exactly the same. They are $850. We know that last week her cumulative earnings were $6,850. Same employer, all the same situation. We want to find out what her employer has to pay this week for federal and state unemployment taxes. New cumulative earnings are $7,700. Has she passed a limit for either FUTA or SUTA? Yeah, she has passed the limit for FUTA. She's gone over the $7,000 mark, so her employer does not need to pay federal unemployment taxes on all of her wages. We're going to calculate and find out how many dollars of Emily's wages are under the limit. The most common mistake is to see the limit as $7,000, see her new cum earnings as $7,700 and say, ooh, $700 over, and use that $700 number. That's the wrong number. That would be the number of dollars that were over the limit. Okay? We want to know how many are under. So we take the limit, we take the prior cum, and we subtract, and we say there's $150 of those wages that are under the limit. I then use that $150, and the Kansas ceiling has not passed, so I'm not going to calculate anything with SUTA. I take the $150, multiply it times .008, which is the federal rate. Her employer is going to send $1.20 to the government on her behalf into the pool for federal unemployment taxes. The reason federal taxes are not as high as state taxes is when people apply for unemployment, they go to the state first, and it tends to be when unemployment checks are issued, they're issued from the state, not the federal government. So the state rates are higher because the state pays more in unemployment. Okay? We're then going to look at doing the state unemployment tax calculation. All of the wages are under the limit, so all $850 need to be multiplied times that .037, which was her employee's experience rating, and we're going to get the same amount of $31.45 this month sent to the state. As long as Emily is employed by that employer during this year, no more federal unemployment taxes need to be calculated. Once you reach the ceiling or the limit, from then on, we don't have to worry about federal taxes. Next example, guess what's going to happen? Emily keeps working. Once again, Emily is making, I've got to find my money, get myself on my chart. Once again, the next Friday comes around, Emily's going to get another paycheck, another $850. It's the week ending March 31st. This makes her prior cum, the $7,700, $7,700. Same unemployment experience rating for the state, and we're going to find her federal and state unemployment taxes that the employer is going to pay for her. I'm going to zoom back in. We see that with this paycheck, her new cumulative earnings will be $8,550. Prior earnings were $7,700 or $7,700. Has she just passed a limit? The limit that she has passed is at the state level. We can ignore all federal unemployment taxes on her because we've already handled that during the last pay period. So there are no federal taxable amounts, but we're going to take the $8,000 limit for state. We're going to subtract the cum earnings, prior cum earnings, and find out that $300 of the dollars that Emily earned during this pay period are under that ceiling. I keep calling it a limit. The book really refers to it as a ceiling. $300 need to have state unemployment taxes taken care of then. We're not going to in any way worry about FUTA because we're over the limit and took care of the last of that during last week. Our final calculation for Emily for state or federal unemployment then will be the $300 under that ceiling for this pay period times 0.037. It's going to be the $11.10 going for state unemployment taxes because of Emily's paycheck to the government. Every paycheck past these for Emily until next year, she'll be completely over the $7,000 and the $8,000 limit. There will be no more federal or state unemployment taxes paid by the employer. Is that making sense? These limits work exactly like the Social Security tax limits. It's just they're smaller numbers, and so they tend to be reached a lot more often by employees. You just don't see them because they don't come out of your paycheck. But if you were to be in business for yourself and have employees, those employees would it would be part of your responsibility for those employees that you would, out of your profits, pay those taxes. Is that all right? I'm going to take you for a minute to look at what homework problems we're going to do, and let's just try to do one together here. These are actually on the same page in the handout. They're interspersed with the, because this is actually handled as one section in the book. I broke it into two separate pieces. I think it's easier to understand in two separate pieces. Do you want to just start and let's do 13 together? Okay. This form that we've been working on in the class notes will not be available to you on the test. However, you need to use it as a model, and you need to memorize the pattern that we go through. I will give you the limits. Right. You need to, this model of how things work is not going to be available. It would simply be a problem like Emily has prior cum earnings. She makes so much this week. I'll be giving you limits of 7,000 and 8,000, but how you handle the numbers that I consider this a model, a setup of equations. The model needs to be memorized. Does that make sense, what I'm saying, Josh? Okay, so I'm going to take this away, and we're going to see if together we can't do number 13. Where are we going to begin? It says, Todd has current gross earnings of $1,088.64. So his current paycheck is, let me get down here, current pay. So this is on a clean sheet of paper, right? Current pay, 1088.64. His prior cum earnings were 6959.28. We know that the state tax rate for his employer is 3.15%, so that would be SUTA rate. And I also know that always the federal unemployment tax rate is 0.8%. With those four pieces of information, oops, I'm going the wrong way. what we want to do is figure out what his employer owes in state and federal unemployment taxes. Where are we going to begin? Who's got an idea?
Is that what you mean? Oh, we'll add those two together.
That's where I think we ought to begin.
Okay. Sorry.
We need to, no, that's great, and that's what I'm saying. When you've got a blank sheet of paper, this works a little bit differently than when you've got a model. And so we need to think, if we had this on a test or if we had this on our homework, where would we begin? And why do you want to add those two together? Good. I need to find out during this pay period what my cumulative total is to find out whether I'm over either one of those. So the beginning of this, or the very first step, would take my two numbers, add them together. What's my new cum? New year to date. Okay, I'm going to have you say it real slow.
7647.9.
Anyone agree?
Oh, I didn't get that 10. 8864. I wrote the wrong one.
Oh, okay. Let's not listen to him. Who's got the right number? It's okay. We all make mistakes.
$8,047.
8047.
92
92 cents.
cents.
Okay. Whoa.
89 cents, isn't it?
No, you're good.
All right, one more time. 6954.
695.9.28.
Sorry.
It's 6959.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 6959. Okay. 28. And we're adding 1088.64 to it. New cum will be great. During this pay period, I went over the federal limit and I went over the state limit both. So I need to find out how many dollars are under the limit for the federal and how many dollars are under the limit for the state. Where do I begin?
Subtract that. $7,000 minus 6959.28.
This is for the federal. I'm going to take the ceiling and I'm going to subtract. And that will give me the total dollars that I need to pay federal unemployment taxes on. Right? I'm going to let you work for just a minute. For state unemployment taxes, I also went over the limit. The limit of that is $8,000. So I need to make a second calculation to find out how many dollars I'm going to use as the base for my state unemployment. Fran, do you have the number for FUTA? $40.72. Who else is back there? Allison, do you have the one for SUTA?
It's 1,040.72.
Which makes sense because the limit is $1,000 higher on SUTA. So I know how many dollars I'm responsible for paying federal taxes on, how many dollars I'm responsible for paying state taxes on. Then I'm going to take those two separate rates, those two different numbers, and calculate. FUTA calculation would then look like this. Is it confusing when we're doing them both at the same time? Okay. We're going to take 40.72 times, and what's that decimal?
Well,
It's 0.8%. So it's 0.008. Most common mistake is people make that 0.08 instead of 0.008. Oh, I'm glad you asked. Move the decimal two places. So it used to be 0.8, and it's 0.008. Are you with me? Just give me a minute. I'm going to move this piece of paper. We're going to walk through that one because that is the most common mistake people make with that rate. I've got 0.8% as my FUTA rate. I need to change 0.8, which is a very tiny number. It's less than 1 out of 100, yes, to a decimal. I always, and I'm going to switch colors, when I'm changing from a percent to a decimal, I drop the percent and I move it 2 places. I use zeros as placeholders. 0.008 would be this would be the percent. And I convert it to a decimal, and this would be the rate as a decimal. Sandra, does that make sense now?
Yeah, I just did, yeah.
I know, and 0.08 is the most common wrong number that we use. So, okay, back on my original then. $40.72 under the ceiling times 0.008. 33 cents, all right. And the SUTA is $1,040.72 times, and that decimal we're going to use is 0.0315. That's right. We come up here and say our SUTA rate was 3.15%. I'm going to go 2 decimal places over. That's right. So some of those things we did in some of those early sessions we're now dealing with converting percents to decimals. We're going to put that in our calculator. Allison, do you have that one? I see your fingers flying back there.
3278.
3278. Anyone agree? Good. So without the model, with just going through the process on your own, that's how you would deal with these problems. Those would be the way they'd be set up on a test. That's the way it'll be on the final. And that's the way you're expected to use your homework. The class notes give you a pattern to follow so that you can see how to set things up so that when you go home you're able to do them. And if all of the dollars are over $8,000 for an employee, we'd have no calculations at all to make for either the federal or the state unemployment taxes, because once we've hit that ceiling, no more taxes are necessary.
If before you add in
Yes, in the prior cum, if your total earnings
already over 8,000
with the last paycheck, yes. And I don't think there's any examples on here, but you don't need to once you're over the limit. Keep checking. If your prior cum is over $8,000, no more federal or state unemployment taxes would be necessary. And does everyone understand the meaning of a flat tax? It doesn't matter if you're married or single. It doesn't matter how much money you make every year. Each person truly pays the same percentage. These happen to have ceilings, but the person that makes minimum wage and the chief executive officer of a major corporation has those same percentages applied to their earnings. Not the case in federal and state income taxes. They are graduated taxes. When we get together in section 3.4, which is during our next class session, we're going to start talking about categories like married and single, and then different tax brackets, realizing that different amounts of earnings pay different amounts of taxes. So it's not a flat rate. You need to recognize whether things are flat rates or graduated. So are there any other questions about what we're doing in 3.3? If not, we're going to let him turn off the tapes, and I'll let each one of you get started on your own homework, and I'll come around and see what we can do to help you.